arousal, testosterone, which is a key hormone for male health, as well as for female health, but more so in males, it's in much larger quantities, peaks in the bloodstream. And actually testosterone is a key hormone for keeping the libido at a good level in both men and women. But it peaks in men and rises in the bloodstream during sexual arousal, and then upon and after ejaculation, that blood level of it drops. And that would be because testosterone is also needed for the production of sperm, semen, and so you could almost think of all the testosterone heading towards the growing area to start fabricating new sperm cells, all the nutrients for semen, and that hormone gets used up by putting energy and focus on that area of your body to get ready for the next time you need to spread your seed, because your body basically thinks you're procreating. That's the whole idea of it. That's nature's intention. Endocrinology, or the study of hormones, is a very complicated subject, and I'm not going to get into all sorts of different names like DHT and HGH and DHEA, which are all steroid-type hormones which are related to and made from testosterone, or are the building blocks of testosterone itself. And these are all known as hormones of youth in some respects, because as people tend to age, often these things drop quite drastically, and when certain of these hormones get really low, then aging advances onto the body at quite a rapid rate. So the idea of preserving and optimizing levels of these in a balanced way in the body is very key to a long and healthy life. Now, my feelings around that dip of testosterone after ejaculation is that these hormones could be used for other purposes, for healing purpose and for cultivating health throughout the body. If you are able to avoid ejaculation through certain practices like the Taoist exercises or the tantric exercises of retaining seminal emission, you can check out works by Mantak Chia, Daniel P. Reed, Margot Anand, and others to find out more about these kinds of practices. But the health benefits of retaining the ejaculation are these hormones that stay in the body and flow through it, healing and regenerating tissue, and also the content and nutrient density of the sperm is retained, and you're not having to provide more of those high quality dense nutrients to get ready for the next bout of procreation. Dr. Van Voorhees of the University of Arizona did a study a number of years ago on nematode worms, and this study was quite groundbreaking, and it actually ended up on the front page of the New York Times. And it took 3 groups of these nematode worms. There was a control group, which was worms that were allowed to live alongside female worms and procreate at will. So they were allowed to make babies and just continuously spend their seed at will. Then there was the group that he had altered to be unable to ejaculate or spend their seed or their even their semen during the copulation process. So they were living alongside female worms, but when they would copulate or try to procreate, they weren't spending their seed. They were actually retaining that. They still had all their genitalia intact, but these little worms, which by the way are used in a lot of studies and are quite similar genetically to humans, as odd as that may sound, but animal studies aren't as far-fetched as some people might think. They're often used with a lot of realism as to what could pertain to the health of humanity. So yeah, he had these 3 groups of worms, and over the course of however long their lifespan was, it's just several days really, he found out that the worms that lived the longest are the worms that had the alteration to them where they weren't spending their seed, but they were having sex. The worms that lived the shortest were the ones that were living alongside the female worms and constantly procreating, and in between were the celibate worms. They were basically monks. And so yeah, there's a double in length of lifespan in the worms that were preserving and retaining their seminal fluids, and then the ones that were procreating the most lived the shortest. And that was a period of, I think, like 7 to 10 days compared to like 14 plus days for the ones that were retaining that inside themselves. Now, I'm not suggesting people be surgically altered or genetically altered to not be able to produce sperm and semen, not at all. But these practices are that Mantak Chia talks about, as well as these other authors, are quite safe and very beneficial to health. And they take a certain amount of discipline. It's something you might want to look into. Or you might simply just choose to take what's known as the middle path in Taoism and not expel your seed at random or as often as you might. One difference I'd like to mention about human health is that the humans do have a different physiology from worms. From studies on sexuality and sexual health, we do know that monks that are celibate generally do have more instances of diseases such as prostate cancer, and prostate tumors and prostate enlargement over people that are more sexually active. So doctors, without really knowing or being aware of the idea of seminal retention, they often say it's healthier to ejaculate and have lots of sex than it is to be celibate, and I totally agree. So that's different in the sense with the worms, because the worms, it was the other way around. The ones that were living the shortest were procreating a lot. However, the worms don't have prostates, and it's that prostate which is that gland in male that is often in our culture being subject to a lot of issues, because it's a gland that absorbs toxins, is often in contact with a lot of toxins because it's so close to the wall in the colon. So people are loaded with xenoestrogens, excessive phytoestrogens, and this causes issues in the prostate. However, when you use your that area of your body, you use it or lose it basically, you have blood flowing through it and you keep it healthy. So if you choose not to ejaculate as much as the worms, which is of benefit, there are different things you can do for prostate health. I definitely suggest anyone interested in long-term health of their whole body look into prostate massage of themselves. Mantak Chia talks about this. There's other authors that talk about this. You can do Google searches on that. It might seem extreme to some people, but really, are you in touch with your body? Do you have the urge for radiant long-term health? And are you just have these cultural fears built up in you that are preventing you from exploring a possibility such as that? You can always get your partner to help you out with that if that makes you more comfortable. Another study that is quite famous is the ones that talk about men who ejaculate more over the course of their lifetime have better prostate health. And again, this is just because of the flushing out of the prostate. And I strongly believe that if we live lives that are generally not filled with toxins, this is a general study with the average person, you can't really get an accurate picture of what's going on with the prostate just by a simple study like that. But yes, I do believe if we are all exposed to toxins and that area of the body can collect them, we need to have movement through there, but it's not the ejaculation process that brings blood to the prostate. It's sexual arousal. So I've never seen studies on people who have done seminal retention. I'm sure one day we might see them. It's not a large group of people in the world that are practicing these types of conscious sexuality, internal cultivation practices, but I'd strongly like to see that one day. But basically, I do intuitively feel that these types of practices do bring blood flow to the prostate and are going to prevent those issues that are seen by the people that do studies on the prostate and are recommending a lot of ejaculation when really it's not the ejaculation, it's the stimulation to the prostate, like I said before. The Kinsey report, which was a fairly conservative survey done a number of years ago, which is still referred to today. It was a very large-scale survey across, I believe it was the U.S., and it discovered that roughly the average male experiences over 5,000 ejaculations in his lifetime. So with today's statistics, I don't know how much that would have changed. We live in a culture that has a lot more emphasis on sexuality, as well as the widespread indulgence and excessive indulgence of it. So I believe that number would be much higher today. But if we just use that number of 5,000 ejaculations in a lifetime, and we times that by the amount of fluid in the average ejaculation, which is about 3 cc's of fluid, that equals over 4 gallons of seminal fluid in your lifetime that you might be expelling if you're the average person. Now today's types of statistics, I'd imagine that's 5, maybe even 6 gallons in a lifetime. And if you consider the nutrient density of seminal fluid, this is a massive drain on the body and its resources.